I'm sorry, madam, but your name isn't on any reservation, and frankly, your attire, it doesn't meet the standards of a five-star establishment like the Serafina. You'll have to leave, the impeccably dressed hotel manager said, his voice smooth as silk but cold as ice. Sarah Miller, 45, dressed in comfortable jeans and a simple sweater after a long charity walk, clutched her worn tote bag. But my husband, he owns this hotel chain, Robert Miller. The manager and the nearby concierge exchanged a barely perceptible condescending smirk. Of course he does, dear. Now please don't make a scene. Seconds later, as Sarah sat on a bench outside, feeling humiliated, her phone buzzed. It was Robert. He was in the lobby. And he was about to unleash a hurricane. If you believe true class isn't about clothes but character, type, dignity below. Sarah Miller preferred muddy boots to Manolos, community gardens to galas. Though married to Robert Miller, the dynamic CEO of the ultra-luxury Serafina Hotel Group, Sarah had always maintained her own quiet, unassuming life. She was a dedicated volunteer, spending her days working with underprivileged children and environmental charities, finding fulfillment far from the opulent boardrooms and glittering social events that defined Robert's world. She dressed for comfort and practicality, jeans, simple sweaters, sturdy walking shoes, her appearance reflecting her down-to-earth personality rather than her husband's immense wealth. Robert adored her authenticity, her compassionate heart, the way she kept him grounded amidst the pressures of his corporate empire. He often joked she was his secret weapon, his moral compass. Today, Sarah had just finished a grueling 10-mile charity walk for a local children's hospital. She was tired, a little dusty, and exhilarated. Robert was in town for a surprise inspection of the Serafina's flagship city hotel and had asked her to meet him there for a late lunch in their private suite. He'd said to just come as she was. He knew she'd be coming straight from the walk. She arrived at the palatial entrance of the Serafina, its gleaming marble floors and towering crystal chandeliers, a stark contrast to her slightly disheveled state. She carried her worn tote bag, which held a water bottle, a change of socks, and the fundraising pledges she'd collected. She wasn't looking for special treatment, just to quietly make her way to the elevators and up to Robert's suite. She approached the main concierge desk, manned by a young, impeccably groomed man named Julian, whose smile seemed permanently affixed. Nearby stood Mr. Alistair Finch, the hotel's general manager, a man renowned for his obsession with appearances and his almost snobbish adherence to what he considered Serafina standards. "Good afternoon," Sarah said politely to Julian. "I'm here to meet my husband, Robert Miller. He should be expecting me." Julian's smile flickered as his eyes did a swift, dismissive appraisal of Sarah's attire. The dusty jeans, the simple sweater, the slightly worn trainers, the utilitarian tote bag. He clearly didn't associate her with the usual high-net-worth clientele of the Serafina. "Robert Miller, you say?" Julian's tone was a little too smooth, a little too condescending. "And do you have a suite number, madam? Or is he meeting you in one of our public lounges?" Before Sarah could reply, Mr. Finch glided over, his expression one of polite but firm gatekeeping. "May I assist you, madam?" he inquired, his gaze also lingering on Sarah's clothes with barely concealed disapproval. Sarah repeated her request, explaining she was meeting her husband, Robert Miller, the CEO. At the mention of CEO, both Julian and Mr. Finch exchanged a look. It was a look Sarah had seen before, a mixture of disbelief and amusement, the kind reserved for people perceived to be deluded or trying to pull a fast one. "Ah yes, Mr. Robert Miller, our esteemed CEO," Mr. Finch said, his voice dripping with false deference. "Of course. And you are Mrs. Miller, I presume?" The emphasis on Mrs. Miller was heavy with sarcasm. "Yes," Sarah replied, starting to feel uncomfortable. "That's correct." "How delightful," Finch continued, his smile not reaching his eyes. "It's just that, well, we have no record of a Mrs. Miller arriving or scheduled to meet Mr. Miller. And our CEO typically informs us well in advance of any personal guest arrivals, especially family." He then let his gaze drift pointedly over Sarah's attire again. "And, madam, with all due respect, the Serafina maintains a certain dress code, a standard of elegance our patrons expect. Your current ensemble doesn't quite align with that standard. Sarah felt a flush of indignation. My husband asked me to meet him here directly after a charity event. He is aware of how I would be dressed. Julian, emboldened by his manager's stance, chimed in. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding, madam. Maybe you have the wrong hotel, or the wrong Mr. Miller. The implication was clear. Someone like her couldn't possibly be married to their Robert Miller. I assure you this is the correct hotel, and he is my husband, Sarah stated, her quiet voice now laced with a firmness that surprised them both. Could you please simply call his suite or his mobile? He will confirm. Mr. Finch waved a dismissive hand. Madam, we cannot disturb Mr. Miller without proper verification, and frankly, your claim is somewhat difficult to credit given the circumstances. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial yet still condescending whisper. Look, dear, why don't you just run along? Perhaps come back when you're more appropriately attired, and with a confirmed appointment. We wouldn't want to cause any embarrassment for anyone. He then straightened up, his professional mask firmly back in place. Julian, please ensure the lady finds her way out. We must maintain the decorum of the lobby. Julian, with a small triumphant smirk, stepped forward. This way, madam, if you please. He gestured towards the exit, his body language making it clear this was not a request. Sarah was stunned by the blatant dismissal, the public humiliation. She saw other guests in the opulent lobby casting curious, pitying, or disdainful glances her way. She knew arguing further would be pointless and would only create the scene Mr. Finch seemed so keen to avoid. With a sigh of weary resignation, she allowed Julian to escort her towards the grand revolving doors. Thank you for your hospitality, she said quietly as she stepped out onto the busy sidewalk, the cold air a sharp contrast to the artificially warmed lobby. She found a public bench nearby, sank onto it, and pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly. She dialed Robert's number. Robert Miller answered on the second ring, his voice warm and cheerful. Sarah, sweetheart, are you downstairs? I was just about to send my assistant to look for you. Robert, Sarah began, her voice a little shaky. I was downstairs. I'm outside now. They wouldn't let me in, Robert. The manager and the concierge. They said I wasn't dressed appropriately and they didn't believe I was your wife. There was a sudden, dead silence on Robert's end. When he spoke again, his voice was a low, dangerous growl that Sarah recognized from the rare occasions his legendary temper was truly provoked. They what? Who? Give me names, Sarah, and don't you move an inch. I'll be right there. The line clicked off. Sarah sat on the bench, a strange mixture of residual humiliation and a dawning sense of impending something. She knew Robert. She knew his fierce protectiveness of her, his intolerance for snobbery and incompetence. Less than 90 seconds later, the grand revolving doors of the Serafina burst open, and Robert Miller strode out, his face a mask of cold fury. He was followed closely by his harried-looking executive assistant, who was frantically trying to keep up. Robert spotted Sarah on the bench immediately, his expression softening for a fraction of a second before hardening again as he scanned the hotel entrance. He walked directly to her, took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Are you okay, my love?" he asked, his voice tight. Sarah nodded, a watery smile touching her lips. "Just a bit deflated." "Deflated?" Robert echoed, his eyes blazing. "They're about to experience a corporate deflation, the likes of which they've never imagined." He turned, pulling Sarah gently with him, and strode back into the Serafina lobby like a conquering general returning to a mutinous outpost. Mr. Finch and Julian were back at their posts, looking self-satisfied. Their expressions froze when they saw Robert Miller re-enter, not from the elevators but from the street, hand in hand with the very woman they had just ejected, his face like a thundercloud. "Mr. Finch, Julian." Robert Miller's voice, usually calm and measured in public, now cracked through the opulent lobby like a whip, silencing all conversation. Heads turned, guests paused, staff members froze. "In my office. Now." He didn't wait for a response, simply turned and strode towards the general manager's office, Sarah still holding his hand. Finch and Julian, their faces ashen, scrambled to follow, trailed by Robert's equally grim-faced assistant. The next 15 minutes, as recounted later by horrified junior staff who overheard snippets through the partially closed door, were not pretty. Robert Miller, in a display of cold, surgical fury, dismantled Finch and Julian's careers. He demanded to know in excruciating detail why his wife, the co-founder of two of the major charities the Serafina Group publicly championed, a woman whose quiet philanthropy had benefited thousands, had been treated like a vagrant. He questioned their judgment, their training, their basic human decency. Finch's excuses about standards and dress codes withered under Robert's icy contempt. Julian's attempts to blame procedure were met with a scathing lecture on the difference between service and servitude. "This hotel," Robert stated, his voice low but carrying deadly conviction, "is built on a foundation of hospitality and respect for all individuals, not on the superficial judgment of appearances. You, Mr. Finch, with your pathetic obsession with decorum, and you, Julian, with your snide condescension, have managed to insult not only my wife, but the very ethos of this entire company in the space of 5 minutes." He paused, then delivered the final blow. "As of this moment, you are both terminated from the Serafina Hotel Group, effective immediately. Your severance will be the statutory minimum. Security will escort you from the premises." He then turned to his assistant. "Get HR on the line. I want every single staff member who was on duty in this lobby during this incident, including those who witnessed it and did nothing, scheduled for immediate intensive retraining on guest relations, empathy, and the Serafina Code of Conduct, which apparently needs to be rewritten in bolder print. And get me the heads of marketing and PR. Our next global campaign is going to be about authentic hospitality, not exclusionary snobbery." He then picked up Finch's desk phone, dialed an internal number. "Maintenance, this is Robert Miller. I want every dress code sign in this hotel and every hotel in our group worldwide removed by the end of the day. Our standard is decency, not designer labels." Within the hour, Mr. Finch and Julian were seen being escorted out a side door, carrying small boxes of personal effects, their careers at the Serafina over. A palpable wave of shock and fear, followed by a dawning sense of a new order, swept through the hotel staff. Robert Miller, after ensuring Sarah was comfortably settled in their suite with apologies and room service, personally addressed the entire assembled day shift staff in the hotel ballroom. He didn't shout. He spoke with quiet intensity about the values of the company, the importance of genuine human connection, and the absolute unacceptability of the kind of judgment his wife had endured. He made it clear that respect and empathy were not optional extras, but core requirements for anyone wearing the Serafina uniform. The story of the CEO's wife being kicked out and the subsequent immediate ruthless firings and policy overhaul became a legend within the global hospitality industry, a stark warning about the dangers of mistaking superficial appearances for true worth and a testament to a CEO who truly lived his company's stated values, especially when it came to the person he cherished most. Sarah typically felt a little embarrassed by the scale of the fallout, but she also knew Robert had done what he felt was necessary to correct a profound disrespect. Lunch in the suite was quiet, but filled with a renewed sense of their bond. As they looked out over the city, Robert took her hand. "Never let anyone make you feel small, Sarah," he said softly. "You're the biggest thing in my world." And the Serafina Hotel Group, from that day forward, operated with a subtly different, perhaps more genuinely welcoming air. All because one quiet woman, dressed for a charity walk, encountered a manager who forgot that true five-star service begins with recognizing the inherent dignity in everyone, regardless of their attire. Subscribe to my channel if you believe in leadership that walks the talk and that true value is always more than skin deep.